Lions presenters, Lion Council Chair, distinguished Lions, distinguished presenters all. Again, it is a pleasure for me to be part of a team working towards the enlightenment of our membership with a view to enabling us to better serve the communities in which we live. The subject this afternoon, of course, the environment and me, was chosen deliberately because sometimes we think we are divorced from what is taking place around us. And so today we will have two great presenters. I have had the distinct pleasure of listening to both of them. And of course, in particular, the subject which is very dear to them, the environment. I have no doubt we will this afternoon be treated with a sufficient amount of information to enable us to do better with the environment that has been loaned to us. We are here on loan, so is the environment loaned to us, that we may live it better for those who follow us. And so I am not going to be talking to that because I have absolutely no expertise. I may be one of the abusers of the environment. And I will call on Lion John Blaze to introduce our first presenter for the two-pronged approach to the environment and me, a case for climate change. Lion John.
Thank you very much, Lion Eldridge. Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce the first of two presenters this afternoon. Dr. Denise Forrest is the Managing Director and Principal Consultant of Forrest and Partners Limited, formerly Forrest and Associates, a firm of environmental consultants and project managers. Trained as a biochemist and bioprocess engineer in Jamaica and Australia, she has had years of practical experience in waste management, environmental management, EIAs, strategic planning, project management, monitoring and evaluation, climate change adaptation and mitigation, and training and capacity building. She holds a BS in Natural Sciences from the University of the West Indies, and MS in Bioprocess Engineering from the University of New South Wales, and an MBA from the University of New Orleans, and a doctorate from the University of Liverpool. Dr. Forrest is a very experienced project manager and has managed many projects across a wide range of issues. In the Caribbean, she has worked on monitoring and evaluation for the World Bank's Ship-Generated Waste Project in the OECS, and for the government of Barbados in solid waste diversion strategies. She has also worked in Jamaica on the development of the country's National Solid Waste Management Plan. As a project coordinator of the Global Environment Facility Caribbean Regional Fund for Wastewater Management, she worked across the region on financing the establishment of wastewater treatment facilities. She has also worked as a project manager for the National Capacity Self-Assessment Project, the National Forest Management and Conservation Plan, and the development of national action plans for the National Environment and Planning Agency and the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. Dr. Forrest is a trained environmental auditor for ISO 14001 and the World Bank Environmental and Social Management Systems standards. Both standards require assessments of environmental and social risks, and she has experience in conducting risk assessments in this area. Denise is a trained facilitator and has worked with several government agencies to develop strategic management and action plans for multilateral agreements. She has also been involved in environmental policy development for the government of Jamaica, where she has played a leadership role in the development of the National Environmental Management Systems, policy and strategy. A leader both in her professional and civic life, she is a former chairman of the University of Technology, Chemical, Agricultural, and Biological Engineering Advisory Committee, and a former chairman of the National Ozone Commission. She has served on several environmental and planning boards, including the Natural Resources Conservation Authority, the Town and Country Planning Authority, and the Land Utilization Development Commission. Dr. Forrest is a former president of the Jamaican Institute of Environmental Professionals. Fellow Lions and guests, for our second workshop this afternoon entitled The Environment and Me, a Case of Climate Change, please welcome our first presenter, immediate past council chairperson, Lion Dr. Denise Forrest. Over to you, Lion Denise.
Thank you, Lion Jan. Yeah, I just, in the interest of how we've set this up, ask you also to introduce my co-presenter now, because when we get into the PowerPoint, we are not stopping. So I would be very grateful if you would introduce Lion Dr. Peter Gay Chang as well now, so that our presentation will flow and you will hear about the environment at that time and not about us. Thank you for the kind introduction. Is it possible to accommodate that? And Jan, you're muted. Is it possible to do that now? Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, it is, Lion Denise. I'm sorry, just allow me to bring up a bio. Yes. Our second presenter for this morning, this session, Lion Dr. Peter Gay Chang, a Melvin Jones Fellow, is a dedicated professional and has been in the Lions movement for over 25 years. She joined the movement as a Leo in 1996 and was an active Leo before becoming a Lion in 2009. During her presidencies for both Leo and Lions, Lion Peter Gay received numerous awards up to the district level, including Outstanding Sustainable Projects. She is currently the Zone Chairperson of Zone 4A in Sub-District 60B. Lion Peter Gay holds a doctorate in plant virology from Virginia Tech, USA, and has worked with the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries for over 21 years. Fellow Lions, our second presenter for this morning, this afternoon, Lion Dr. Peter Gay Chang.
Thank you very much, Lion Jan.
You're most welcome.
Council Chairman Lion Denise Bentic, Progressive Melvin Jones Fellow, other distinguished Lion leaders, fellow panelists, guests, Leo's my fellow Lions, good afternoon. I confess this is an area that I get very passionate about. And I just want to comment that one of the things that struck me, and Lion Eldridge spoke about it, was the title of this presentation. And let us both congratulate the presenters on this. The Environment and Me, a Case for Climate Change. And what struck us, and what we hope we'll be able to convey this afternoon, is that this is personal. That the whole matter of climate change is personal. And we hope we'll be able to point us individually, collectively, and as a movement towards climate change action. So this afternoon, our presentation will take the following, flow in the following manner. We want to do a poll. We want to hear from you. Then we will move into discussing climate change. Why is it so important? What is it? Key takeaways from Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, what are they finding? We will then look at the case for agriculture. We want to engage you, so we will go into breakout groups, and then we'll end with a call for action. So now we're checking in with you with these 4 questions. We want to have an idea of where are we with climate change action in the multiple district. And so I think I'm going to need Carla here to ask you to quickly, please, all of you, it's 5 questions, very simple to answer. I think it will take about 2 minutes. And we invite you to take part in this poll. We just want to test the pulse. So please go straight ahead. I need not stop sharing line, Carla. I can stick around. Yes?
You can keep sharing.
Great. So please go ahead. We understand that we can't vote. The poll is on now, line, Carla. Yes?
Repeat for me, Lion Denise.
Yes, has it started?
Yes, the poll questions have been launched.
Okay, thank you so very much. And as I said, our intent here is we're checking in. We want to see where we are. Where's the pulse of the multiple district with respect of climate change and climate change action. And we will not discuss the results now. We will discuss them in full when we go to the breakout group. But we just wanted to do that upfront and to begin to engage you in this conversation that we're going to be having this afternoon on the environment and a case for climate change.
And Denise, the participants are coming in slowly but surely. 13 out of 49 have answered.
Okay, wonderful. We'll keep going.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if
32% have participated.
Yes. We're hoping that we can convince them to make it 100%. We really want to hear.
46% have participated.
Okay, I'm encouraged.
Yes.
We're encouraged.
It's moving up.
Yes.
It's moving.
Yes. This perhaps is as important as anything we might say this afternoon. We really think that it's a very, very useful feedback that will not only inform us in the presentation, but hopefully inform the multiple district going forward.
We have stalled at 54%. 56, they heard me, so they're up to 58%. They heard me, 60%.
Okay. Do we give it another 30 seconds or so and close?
We're at 60%, 62.
Okay.
I think, yes, the answers are coming in.
Okay, great. Thank you.
In.
Thank you very much.
64%. We're up to 66% participated.
Yes.
68.
I don't know if I should start counting like Lion Eldridge. He was looking for 55.
Yes.
Participants.
70%.
Okay. All right. Okay, great. So
I think people are taking the time to read the questions and to answer as truthfully as possible.
Yes, and we're inviting their engagement. So
yes,
we will be patient. Yes. We want to hear from them.
Please, folks, we're up at 70%, encouraging everyone to participate in our poll questions.
I'm just a little disappointed that I was not allowed to speak to that, you know?
I too.
Yes, we agree.
Is anything we can do?
Answered all the questions but could not submit.
Oh, wow. And maybe as a result, we certainly won't get to 100%, huh? Because we have marginalized our council chair on our multiple district global leader. No, sorry about that. I apologize. And we really would have, but perhaps.
We have 70% participated so far.
All right.
That is fantastic.
I think that's wonderful. And I think at this point, since in fact, some of our participants can't participate, would that be a reflection of where we are? Are we stalled therefore at 70? I mean, we can't get any better, meaning that we have panelists here, we have our council chair, etc., and they can't. They can. Well, they can
actually, we have 53 attendees, and 36 of the 53 have.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
Yes.
I think in the interest of time, we will give it a minute more or so, guided by you, and then we will move on. But this is an interesting even start, because what we're hoping to move us to is to 100% engagement. I need to say that climate change is the kind of issue in our lives as a world, as a multiple district, that really will require all hands on deck. So may I encourage you against that background to just hop in and do the poll if at all possible.
We have 37 of our 54 attendees have participated.
Okay.
We're up at 72%.
All right. Well, Lion Jan, if we get to 75, I think in the interest of time, there are other sessions following this. We're conscious of that.
75% participated.
Okay. And so with that, I thank you. And I think we will
Lion Carla, will you end?
Okay.
I think, yes, she has ended the poll. 77% participated, 78% actually.
Yes, yes. So we'll discuss that later, especially since we've taken a little bit longer. And Lion Carla will be kind enough to send us a screenshot. So we will share with you the results of the poll and what that says about the pulse, about where we are as individually, collectively, in terms of climate change action. So thank you so very much.
And Denise, you can continue.
Yes, thank you very much. So what is climate change? Why is climate change of vital importance to us? It is, in fact, the challenge of this generation in our world. And let's hear from some leaders who've been talking about this for many years. The former Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, said, we're able to end poverty, and we can debate that. We will be able to, the first generation, to end poverty. But more importantly, we will be the last generation who can take steps to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. Therefore, if this generation does not act, it is inevitable that the world will experience the worst impacts of climate change. And that is, we don't really want to think about that. That's significant. So we have a responsibility, as he said. Future generations will judge us harshly if we fail to uphold our moral and historic responsibilities. And this is why the title is so important. Environment and me. This is a collective responsibility. When you point your finger and say it's the government, this one is pointing back. And our future generations will judge me and will judge you if we fail to do what we can about this whole matter of climate change. President Barack Obama took the United States from on the fence to a situation where they took this thing seriously. He said, we're no longer fiddling about whether it is man-made or not. It is here. It is in our, it's no longer a far problem. It's happening now. It's a reality which we must address. And the current president of the United States and other larger countries are important because they're significant producers of greenhouse gases, said we are falling short. When they test the temperatures, we are falling short. And we must be working now over time to address the matter of climate change. But I would say the rock star of the Conference of the Parties that met, the 26th Conference of the Parties that met in Glasgow in November of 2021. And in fact, the voice that was championing the cause of countries like and regions like ours, Prime Minister Mia Mottley, speaking there, and you would say, it says, it was a rip-roaring speech. Everybody forgot who else spoke. And what did she say? She said to the larger nations who are responsible for the generation of greenhouse gases, they have to try hard. Enough is not being done. They have to try harder, but so do we in our own self-interest. And in truth and in fact, we must avert the climate catastrophe of reaching 2 degrees Celsius. It's a death sentence. And I don't know if you recall that the Caribbean countries, led by our climate scientists who are pushing in Paris, right? We need to maintain 1 degrees centigrade to stay alive. And recent data suggests, and we talk about it, that we might very well reach 1.5 by the end of this century. So it is vital, and we are behind. So what are we talking about when we speak about climate change? Well, there is weather and there's climate. Today, the temperature is 30 degrees Celsius. That's weather. What's happening outside now? It is raining. So it's a description, and that can change very quickly. It can be sunny, and then it's raining. So that's weather. Climate, on the other hand, is long-term. We're looking at the same variables, rainfall and temperature, but it occurs over a longer period of time. And human activity is changing the climate. The climate is expected to change, of course, it does. But our human activity is changing the climate. Things like natural variations of time would change the climate, but human activity now is responsible for changing the climate. Let's just look at it just quickly. The world is warming now faster than any point in our recorded history. What is causing that? What's causing this warming? No, warming is natural. Solar radiation forms light waves and it goes through the atmosphere and it goes through and it enters the earth, right? Through the atmosphere. And what happens is that some of the radiation is absorbed by the earth. We need it. It warms the earth. And some of it is radiates back, right? And some is trapped. And this is how we get the warming effect. But the issue is now that greenhouse gases are resulting in the concentration, and the concentration of greenhouse gases are causing what is trapped to be much more than the normal. We've broken that, right? More, and therefore there is the balance of outgoing infrared and what is trapped has been disrupted.
Excuse me, Lion Denise.
Yes.
We have a hand raised. Lion Christopher Emmanuel has his hand raised. Lion Christopher.
Yes, Lion Christopher.
Lion, can I interject? Can we allow the presenters to complete their presentation and we take questions thereafter? And Denise, would that be a better, instead of disrupting the flow?
I was going to take the question and then say, this is the, I would prefer, we would, yes. In fact, at the end, we have questions galore and we want to answer them. Could we just ask you to make a note, and we promise, and I will make sure that we move through quickly enough, both myself and Lion Peter Gay, so that you will have an opportunity to have your questions answered.
Well, he has lowered his hand at this time, so.
Okay, yes, thank you very much. Thank you for your understanding, Lion Christopher.
He apologizes.
No, not a problem. So as those concentrations of greenhouse gases, CO2, increase, more of the radiation is kept, and the Earth is warming more than it should. And the greenhouse gases we're talking about here is CO2 coming from combustion or cars, burning coal, deforestation, methane coming from landfills, agriculture, livestock, other gases, ozone, CFCs. These gases have increased to the point that we're having a situation. You see here where our largest sources are: air transportation, oil production, industrial processes, transportation. These are significantly affecting. And what we find when we look at the world, right, in terms of the source of greenhouse gases, is that they're mainly fossil fuels. You will note that we moved from less than 1 in the 19th century billion metric ton of carbon now to 10 billion ton of metric carbon being generated. And this is responsible for the greenhouse gases and contributing to the warming effect. So when you look at the temperatures, right, in the 19th century, the average temperature, remember this is normal, of the Earth was, minus 2.5. When we got to the industrialization started, then we had the wars, it increased a little bit. And by the time we hit the 70s, the surface temperatures moved rapidly and exponentially. Greenhouse gases are concentration, mainly caused by fossil fuels, at their highest in 2 million years and continue to rise. It's relentless. Countries are concerned about economic development. So changes in how we practice. And as a result, what is happening now? The Earth is 1.1 degrees warmer than in the late 1800s and 19th centuries. And it is the warmest on record. The last decade is the warmest on record. So climate change, however, is more than the warmer temperatures, but the consequences of the warming temperatures is what is so significant to our way of life and which threatens that this generation and the future generations. The consequences are intense droughts. We just live it. If you didn't notice it before, intense droughts, water scarcity, severe fires, we've seen them all across the world, rising sea level, flooding, melting polar ice, catastrophic storm, and declining biodiversity. All of those things combined have a significant impact on our way of life, economic, social, and otherwise. So we can see what's happening. Here are some pictures. Last year in Europe, 2020 was the hottest year that ever seen, and people's behavior changed. They just take off their clothes and go underwater. Our storms have been of great concern. Hurricane Delta, within less than 2 days, it moved to a Category 4 storm, and its impact on southern United States, people's homes, the whole economy was significant. Same too with Hurricane Eta, followed by Hurricane Iota, Category 4 storms, significant dislocation, significant impact. In our own region, Grenada, the flooding is about to remove the bridge. In Jamaica and other areas have pictures. Towns are being inundated with significant flooding. We have droughts, examples here in Dominica and in Jamaica, significance. And so we have the nexus of drought and impacting, and water scarcity, impacting the whole matter of food security. Forest fires in Australia, the worst that we've ever seen, significantly impacting not only the carbon sink of trees, but biodiversity, livelihoods. The poor bear don't have anywhere to live anymore. It's hanging on to just a bit of ice. And as the polar ice melts, sea level rises, and the implication of sea level rise for our own countries here is evident, okay? So people are experiencing climate change in diverse ways, but it is impacting our lives, our health, our food and food security, our housing, safety, our work, because economies are being impacted. Countries like ours in this region are particularly small island nations, particularly vulnerable because of sea level rise, saltwater intrusion. You know, in some countries, in a particular country, which is in somewhere in, I still remember, but the leader of that country, climate change and sea level rise, so the man had to buy land to relocate his nation, right? And we're having situations of protracted drought, again, very significant in terms of food security. But what is happening is that we have a new kind of refugee. People have to move from these areas to other areas in order to feed themselves. Here are some examples of sea level rise and its impact. The boat that is there in the middle used to be on the beach. The sea has, you know, this is where it was parked, but the sea has risen. So what then are the key takeaways? And forgive me, I am pressing on because I'm conscious that we're on time. Takeaways from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, their most recent report, which is kind of letting us know where we are and why we need climate action more than ever before. 45% of the world's population are highly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Let me tell you that we fall in the 45%. Just think about it. Just think about our island states. Just think about the impact on our economies when we have severe storms. Just think about the impact on our agriculture, which to a large extent is rainfall when we have droughts. We are in that 45%. A third of the world is exposed to deadly heat stress. You've seen the temperatures all over, and this is significant. And by the end of the century, it will be 3 in 4 people that will be. So it's impacting lives. 1 billion people are who live are projected to live in flood coastal areas will be impacted. 1 in 10%. And if we think again about our own countries, all of our cities, major cities and towns are where? On the coast, by and large. So coastal zone is a significant economic zone for us, and there are issues related to flooding, etc. So the impacts of climate change cannot be ignored. Are we to panic? No, we're to be informed, and we are to become part of the army taking action. And the panel suggests that 30 to 50% of the land has to be conserved if we are going to be able to live in climate change. Remember, climate change is irreversible. We can't turn it off and turn it on, but we can slow it down. And this is what is required for climate change action. And it's going to require us to not to do a number of things. So try to indicate to you why is it significant, what it is, the impact it's been having on us. And at this point in time, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to invite my co-presenter, Lion Dr. Peter Gay-Chan, Melvin Jones Fellow, to continue the dialogue and talk about this impact on agriculture and, of course, by extension, food security. So I'm going to have to stop sharing now, and Lion Peter Gay, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Thanks so much. All right, so thanks very much, Lan Denise. So for me, climate change is a very, very big deal, especially when it comes to agriculture. And this is a question I wanted everyone to really think about. Are we starving? Especially as it relates to what is happening in the world with climate change. So when we think about agriculture, what do we think about? Hang on a second, what do we think about? We think about the produce that we go to market and see. We think about all the foods that we can go and buy, fish. We even think about bees, where we get our honeys. When we think of agriculture, we think of all these things. Even when we do our own little backyard gardening, that's agriculture. We have all contributed to agriculture. Now, why is agriculture so very important? Well, as Denise was talking about, it's all a matter of food security. For any country, for any nation to be healthy and sustainable, they need a good food system. And if they're not able to grow their own food or enough food, they must have a way or some other means of getting that food into their country. Right now, in 2020, a study was done and it was seen that 65% of poor adults in the world use agriculture as a way to make a living. And if they're not using it to make a living, they're at least doing something so that they can feed themselves and their family. Now, within agriculture, especially in the Caribbean, it employs thousands of persons. We have your primary producers, which are your farmers, your livestock growers, your field hands, all those that are directly involved in the ground. And yes, that is also you householders that do backyard gardening. You have your processors. They're the ones that will take all these products, and your butchers, everybody, and they will prepare it in such a way that you'll get the food. Your value added producers, they're the ones that would take from your processors and your primary producers and kind of change up what that product was to give you a whole new product. Think about with, for instance, cassava, and you use cassava to make bami. It also employs a lot of persons that will look at the market, look at how it is that we're spending our money. Does it make sense to grow this particular crop? Do we have markets outside of Jamaica that can in turn benefit us and making us more sustainable? So we've talked about that agriculture is very important for employment. Another thing, as I just mentioned, it's all a matter too of foreign exchange. Now, one of the things that has been noticed at developing countries, their GDP is between 4 to 25%. And your GDP means your gross domestic product. And that is just a matter of how you rate a country's economic stability. So Jamaica currently is at about 8.68%, and this was from 2020. Another very important aspect of agriculture, of course, is the food that we eat. Without agriculture, pretty much we're gonna die. I'm not even going to make any bones about that one. So I mentioned all the different jobs, terms of employment you can get, and all of this falls under what is called a farm to fork concept. It originally started off in the EU, and Jamaica and some of the other islands have adapted this, trying to show a process and a system whereby farmers and all persons along the food chain are able to benefit from production. So the challenges in agriculture, they're nothing new, especially it is if you've taken your hand at even growing something. Pests and diseases, droughts and floods. The cost of labor, especially if you have small to larger farms. I'm certain everyone knows it's theft. There are also situations of contamination of groundwater. Of course, market access if you're a farmer and you need to sell your goods. And of course, the cost of actually buying things for your production. And climate change actually greatly impacts at least 4 of these. The others are to a less extent, but to these 4. And again, Denise has spoken about some of these, especially the droughts and flooding. So this is just really a pictorial example showing how all of the effects of climate change ultimately affect our Earth. Similarly, there are several studies that have been done in the last few decades. World Meteorological Association, World Development Bank, IDB, they have all contributed excessive amount of monies towards really researching and trying to figure out a way to pull back the effects of climate change. So some of the impacts that climate change has with agriculture, and again, a lot of this has been mentioned before. One thing is the increased temperatures. Lion Denny spoke about persons with heat stress. Think about the crops and the animals. They also undergo a heck of a lot of heat stress. Plants have nowhere to move. While we can strip off clothes and jump in river or turn on the AC, plants in the ground have nowhere to go. Same thing with animals. If they're in pasture land and there's no shade, the heat alone can cause the failure of a lot of these plants and animals. Now, when we lose plants and animals, this affects our biodiversity. The Caribbean is known for having a wide array, a beautiful array of biodiversity, number of plants and animals, and we're losing them day by day, year by year, decade by decade, again, because of climate change. She mentioned storms and hurricanes resulting in floods and increased drought that can spread. Again, when I talk about the drought that spreads, think of rivers that have dried up. You're going to end up with sand or dry dirt. When the wind comes in, that blows it a lot over the other flora and fauna, and that in turn can choke them as well. Think about the Sahara desert sand that is currently blowing. I know some persons like myself included, you're feeling sicky and choky, and that affects animals and plants as well. Increased pests and diseases, again, they do better, or rather their effects are exacerbated because the plants and animals are under stress. If more of your plants and animals are under stress, they're going to affect them more. They can die, less food, less animals available. She's also mentioned the rising oceans. Rising oceans mean less land. Less land means we can't do more agriculture. Less agriculture means we can't feed persons. Now, oceans also absorb a lot of carbon dioxide, which is, of course, one of the main greenhouse gases. The problem is that as the oceans rise and more water comes in, the amount of carbon dioxide is going to keep being absorbed by the water. And as with all absorption, you go from areas of high to low. So water is going to keep absorbing all this carbon dioxide in our air, especially if we keep pumping more out there. This in turn acidifies our oceans, and that affects your marine life. Think about a life with no fish, no lobster, crab, all of that. I mean, no, I can't eat those things anymore, but that affects marine life greatly. Also, the rising waters will affect our groundwater, because when the salt comes in and it affects our aquifers, we're going to get salted water. We're going to get acidified water. There has already been announcements, I think it was in 2019, 2020, where the mayor of Kingston was saying he was having issues with the potable water that we have in Kingston because it really and truthfully is not great for human consumption. All right. So with all of that, there is going to be a rise in hunger and, of course, poor nutrition. Now, when we get back to the oceans, we're also thinking about coral bleaching and erosion of our coral reefs. And again, the coral reefs are very important because it's a spawning site of a lot of marine life, a lot of fish, a lot of animals. Even plants are also within the coral reefs. We've mentioned about the greenhouse effects. I'm not really going to go into that, but really and truthfully, are all greenhouse gases bad for you? Now, did you know that actually agriculture and forests contribute to about 20 to 25% of greenhouse gases? This is what you call your natural greenhouse gases. And the three in question are carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. Carbon dioxide from Biology 101, when plants respire, which is at nighttime, they send out carbon dioxide. Animals send out carbon dioxide. With methane, and some persons will know this, it comes out especially a lot from livestock, but it also comes in when you mismanage production of fertilizer and management of manure. And of course, nitrous oxide. When you use these fertilizers and plants are taking them up or not taking it up fast enough, When the fertilizer is added to your soil and water, it breaks it down and releases nitrous oxide if the plants are not there to take up the nitrogen. So the thing though is that even though it's 20 to 25%, as I said, these are natural gases, and our agriculture and forests have a unique way of repurposing it. So during the day now, our plants will take up the carbon dioxide, use it with photosynthesis and make food. Same way everything gets repurposed back. The problem is that this balance between nature and our greenhouse gases is completely thrown off because we are burning forests, we are removing plants, and we are increasing the amount of burning fossil fuel, which means that you're adding more of these greenhouse gases to the environment. And like Lion Denise was talking about, and what I was saying before, greenhouse gases are not all bad, because without it, this earth, we couldn't live on it because it would be too cold. So it goes back to the original question that we had. Are we starving? When you look at all the impacts that climate change is doing to our agricultural system. Me? Yes. And I will say this wholeheartedly. Why? There has been a steady rise in the food items, especially the cost of it, because of the low availability of them around the world. I can say almost for a fact that I doubt there's any person here in the audience or anybody that you know that the same amount of money you spent to buy a bag of groceries 5-10 years ago can even remotely buy you half of what it is you buy now. Okay, and it shocks me every time I go to the supermarket or to the market and you realize you leave with less and less groceries for the same amount of money, which means you either have to find more money or you have to do with less. So again, that's a matter of starving. There's a steady rise in pests and diseases. And again, with less food available, we starve. People are living longer. Again, at the beginning of the 1900s, people lived to about 60s, 70s. Now we have persons going all the way to 90s, 100. So longer time, more food needs to be found, and there's more people coming into being. And then of course, there's less arable land around. Now, in recent times, especially in this last decade, because of the explosion of persons and persons living longer, more and more land is going into housing, which means that there's less land available now for us to actually have production. So of course, again, less land available, less food available. And the problem with all of that is that to have a proper food security for any country, you need to have safe and nutritious food for all of your persons. And when you don't have that, it compromises the health of the people in your country. And it has been shown that if children especially do not get proper nutritious foods, that can severely impact their cognitive development. Recently, our own Minister of Agriculture has been trying to put in nutritious programs for children in school. And of course, with the recent war in Ukraine, everything has gone up. And that, Lion Denise, is in terms of the impact of climate change on agriculture. And I will send it back to you.
Thank you so very much. And now we move to the breakout groups, but should I tell you the good news first or the bad news? Let me start with the bad news. The bad news is that we have been advised that in the webinar setting, we can't send you into breakout groups. We wanted to put you into smaller groups and let you talk a little bit and hear back from you. That's the bad news. We can't do that. But what we will attempt to do without taking up too much time here is to put up the questions individually. The first question, what steps will be taken with the CUBS to increase involvement regarding, we want to hear your thoughts about that. What drivers should be instituted at the programmatic level to make sure that it doesn't become a flavor of a day, but a constant kind of focus for the district. What would we need to do? Questions 3 and 4, if we could go. What could the district do to encourage collaborations between clubs to access increasingly available funding to engage in impactful signature projects related to climate change. We'd like to hear from you. And what would you suggest could be included in design stroke promotion of an advocacy campaign to encourage climate change action? So if we could just go back now, just to the heading of, right, go back some more, just to the heading here on the breakout groups. Before we start, no, yeah, thank you. Before we start, could just go on down. We need to share with you the results of the poll. So we're going to stop sharing and then start. I think we need to do that to allow Lion Carla to tell us what those results were so we can discuss it. Remember, we wanted to determine what's the pulse? Where are we as a multiple district? But to get to that pulse, is going to remember it's environmentally. Where are we individually and by extension collectively and as a multiple district? So Lion Carla, I don't know if you're able to deal with the screenshots so that we can share those results with the participants quickly before we go into the questions, and maybe also as we are, we can facilitate, yeah, thank you very much. Maybe depending on what you say, we can facilitate a few question and answers, but I think let's see what we do. We're conscious of the fact that we're not the only game in town and we have to facilitate other presenters. We don't want to go through beyond the hour and 15 minutes or hour and a half. It's taken us a while to come up, but let me tell you what that question one was. It was, how would you rate your knowledge of climate change and climate change action? It's going to take forever. Just leave it up there. I know, but I'll try to open and I'll just say what it is. Your answers, Leah's My Fellow Lions, was the average, on average, was 85% that your knowledge on climate change and climate change action, you had a reasonable amount of knowledge on it. And it's interesting because 85% was average, 5% high, and another 5% very high. So we're seeing there that 95%, of us feel that we have sufficient information on climate change and climate change action. So the glass is half full because information is available, which is wonderful. You are aware, you're not ignorant, so you have the tools to move into climate change. Actually, the second question was, is your club involved in environmental projects? Climate change projects. And there is a difference, but okay. 78% of you said your club was involved in climate change and climate change action. So good. We have information and we have engagement. What were the areas that you were involved in as it related now to climate change action and projects? 63% beach cleanups, 27% plastic recycling, and 63% tree planting. No, I don't want to, forgive me, I'm not being unappreciative of our work here, but in terms of climate action, beach cleanups don't cut it. Okay, so when we look at the other areas on the list, things like water harvesting, energy conservation, remember we said that fossil fuels was the highest contributor to greenhouse gases. And you will find that as we look for solutions, right? A lot of these solutions are looking at energy conservation projects, raising awareness on that. And that's an area when we look at climate action, now armed with our information that we should be looking at. Issues like water harvesting. Remember now, we've talked about the issues of drought, water scarcity. And this is serious because the world is saying that, listen, in another few years, we won't have enough water for the people in the world to survive. So again, this is an area that we're not yet working in, but we could work in. But I've named for you the area. So as we test the pulse now, what does it say? It's saying, 1, we have knowledge. 2, we are engaged. But the areas that we're engaged in need to expand would be the conclusion that we would make, I think, as presenters, based on what we've gotten back, in order to work more in the areas of climate action. And examples that I'm giving here are in water harvesting, in energy conservation, solid waste management, in advocacy and information sharing. The fourth question was, are you interested in doing more work in the area of environment, climate change? Resounding, the multiple district is excited. 95% want to do more work in this vitally important area. Remember, I said it was a challenge of this generation. And as an organization that's working in community to make an impact and to make an impact in people's lives, this is an absolutely fantastic answer. We want to do more work. So the final question was, what is needed to increase participation in environment through climate change action project within our club? What more do we need to do? Remember, we're excited about it. We're already working in it, but we're not exactly working directly in some areas. We want to do more. And the areas that you said, and I think you got it there. The areas that you said we need more of, 71% that you said partnerships. This is so key. It's key for everything we do, but it's absolutely key in climate change if we're going to make an impact. So go to the top of the class. You're with it. We're with you. We're excited. You said 41% financing and 46% more information, and less so 34% in terms of technical capacity. So we've identified that we're going to work some more in the area of climate change and climate change action. We need to have more partnerships. And I've pointed out, and you've said, yes, we want to do more. And we've pointed out, coming out from our poll, and we thank you so much for this. It's so informative. It has given us an idea where we are, that we need to work in. We need to expand the areas we work in from our traditional areas of interest into the areas that specifically address the whole matter of climate change action, reducing fossil fuels, improving our water security, by extension, food security. You've heard from Lion, Dr. Peter Gay on that. We say, yes, we're starving. We cannot deal with that. So we have some opportunities here for action. So perhaps now we could, how much time do we have? Could somebody tell me, Lion, Jan, you're controlling us here. How much time do we have, please?
You have just about 15 minutes again. 15 minutes,
oh, good. So then we can dedicate 10 minutes to not hearing from me and Peter Gay, but we want to hear from you. So could we put up the questions and we invite you to participate? We're sorry about the absence of the breakout, but we can do it this way. Turn your hand and make fashion is what we call it in Jamaica. You have to change gears, you change it. And if we could just find question 1 and put it up, and then perhaps invite a few responses on this one. Can we go full screen? Thank you. Yeah. So question 1 was, what steps need to be taken with clubs to increase involvement and action regarding climate change projects? Hold on, there's a comment there that I need to read, Joan Ferguson says, we have only scratched the surface of climate change. I could only say amen, Johnny, amen, hallelujah, for that. We need to do a lot more as Lions and create special arm of Lionism with professionals like you and Peter Gay and so many others that we have to make a greater impact. I am almost clueless, said Lion Joan. So this is an interesting response. Lion Joan, I agree that we need to do more, okay? Lion Nadine, and I think you're responding to question 1. I remember, I think you can voice it too because they've unmuted you, right? Lion, Carla, and I think. Sensitization and training at the region and zone level. So we're now appealing now to our leadership people to look at this in conjunction with service, because we need to do more, you're telling us, and we're listening to you. We're listening to you. And involvement of key stakeholders, says Lion. Okay, so.
Since you wanted to hear my voice.
Yes, of course.
I think in reality, a lot of us do not have the information required to really plan and execute projects in climate change. So in the first instance, perhaps suggest interested Lions some sensitization and training that could help us to understand what can be done, and also to give us the self-confidence and the tools to get involved. And that would, of course, involve working with agencies like the environmental management authorities. And so we would need guidance or support in designing the projects and some hand-holding. I think there's not sufficient information, and it may seem daunting to many of us to get involved in a meaningful way, access to resources and information.
Yes. I agree. And this is why I think the response of 71% about partnerships was key. We need to work with those who know and those who are involved some more, as well as, of course, in our own training efforts across the region and multiple districts. Let me tell you why I think this is so important. Other people are going to run it, but listen, Lions. Where there's a need, there's a lion. Isn't that so? Well, if we have painted a picture of climate change, it is the challenge of this generation. And we're going to be found wanting. We need, therefore, to work some more in these areas. And so we need partnership. We need also trainers and service people to arrange as part of our training, ongoing training, if we're to listen to what is being said here today, more training, standing courses on climate change. We're not turning into climate scientists, just with enough tools to know how you can begin to make a difference. Thank you very much, Lion. Nadine, I saw something from Lion. Sean Noel, he said, this occasion is a good start. Encourage clubs to network relevant agencies. And Lion Tibo has put in some resources there, which we shared. Lion Velda said education is key when working on topics that are not readily attractive to people and appeals generated. As Lions, we see how projects on the other global causes meet community needs, but sadly, we don't immediately see how environmental projects need those needs. So great. So I'm hearing partnerships, more education.
Could I add to that?
Yes.
Environmental companies, well, not environmental companies, but agencies, JET, and so they do want to work with the public in protecting our environment. So it's not like as if they don't want to pay attention, but they do want to work with us. It's just a matter of us being willing to help and go that extra mile.
Collaborate, I think both state agencies, NGOs, and the private sector will work with us. I think so. This is
definitely.
This is their exciting possibilities. Let's move to question 2. What drivers should be instituted at the programmatic level? Maybe district level to encourage sustained and increased focus and action on climate change projects within Leo's and Leo and Lion clubs. I think to some extent I've seen some of those answers. Or maybe spoke to it. I think we have to have training in this area, really, because it's too critical to become a staple so that our clubs become more comfortable with it. And there has to be a concerted drive. Can I tell you, forgive me, I think it was when I was environment chair, more years than I would want to discuss. And the governor then is no longer with us. We wrote out this wonderful environmental program for District 60B, and not one soul prickle on the program. It just did not excite interest. So at the leadership level, we have to find some way to say, well, if it's not even excited interest, let us find a way to excite you. I don't know what that way would be, so that we can begin to focus, because there are other things that we're excited about. We can see it in our service reports. We have to find a way to do that. And the challenges with leaderships at every level, from top to from district, multiple district club levels. Okay, can we move on to question 3 and 4 quickly? I think we're conscious of the fact that we're running out of time. Can you, question 3 says, what could the district do to encourage collaboration between clubs? There's a lot of climate change money out there. And we fit the bill. You know, oftentimes they don't want to give government. So they want to give agencies like ours. What could the district do to encourage, or multiple districts, to encourage collaboration between clubs to access increasingly available funding to engage in impactful signature projects related to climate action? Any thoughts on that? No thoughts? Okay, I see a thumbs up saying that we should do another one. So you agree this is something that we should do?
And like you said, Denise, there's actually a lot of funding out there, even with us in government. We are encouraged to that every single project we write for funding, we have to have a climate smart slant to it. And that is actually almost a requirement now. Anytime we have to write project proposals, there must be something to address climate change, no matter what it is we do.
Hello, Lions. We have Past District Governor Sean Noel has his hand raised. I will allow him to speak.
Please. Thank you so much.
Go ahead, Lion Sean. Sean, you can unmute. Thank you, Lion Sean.
Thank you. Yes. Good evening, everyone. Lion Carlo, Lion Denise. Thank you, Lion John.
Yes.
One of the aspects I know wasn't particularly covered, but I think it's quite relevant to this conversation, is the aspect of climate financing.
Yes.
And
we didn't want to get into that, boy. But I agree.
Some of you might have heard that we have an agri forum going on right now in Guyana. And for me, it was very poignant that on the first day, when the first PM who arrived with PM Rowley, it rained heavily. And I think that's to send a signal that climate, agriculture, and those conversations have to also consider aspects of financing. Now, one of the big topics is crop insurance. I mean, who's going to tell the farmer when he farms the goods or cattle, when something happens, who's going to insure him? And I think that's a conversation that's being left out. I don't know whether because of the cost is involved about the farmer and the insurance company. There are also aspects of how do we finance startup agriculture projects? You know, agriculture seems to require large investment. How do we accumulate the funds necessary? Have people pool into funds to support agriculture development. So I think as Lions, perhaps we can, in partnership with the same agencies, and to answer the question 3, look at how we can bring across that message and look, yes, agriculture is good, but agriculture costs money. We can't run from that. And while there may be financing out there that we can use for educational purposes, that's probably one of the ways we should go. But I think the conversation around the cost of financing of agriculture should never really be left out of occasions like these, but I understand our limitations. Thank you.
Yes. We only had an hour. But I think that I want Lion Petergate to say something. But before that, I think that one of the things that could probably also form part of our training thing is access to climate funding. It's not exactly something that, everybody perhaps knows about. And in terms of agriculture, we know that commercial banks shy away from it because of risk. And so funding agriculture has always been a challenge within our multiple district. Lion Petergate, did you want to respond to?
Sure. Okay, so Lion Sean, there in Jamaica, like these Men's Finance and some of the banks, there is funding and financing for farmers. Of course, there are certain requirements that are needed and to be put in place because we have had persons, kind of skirt around the system and kind of abuse it a bit. But there is financial funding for farmers, at least out here. With regards, when you're talking about pooling of groups, we work with a lot of farmer groups where what they do is, as a team, purchase equipment, purchase all their required inputs, and they produce and they share. They find their markets. It's a full association. So they do that a lot as well. And any of the projects that we do right, especially when we have a climate slant to it, we do involve our farmers. We do choose farmers that we know are very conscientious of how things are, of how climate is, and want to go there and make that work with us.
And it speaks to the fact that as Lions, we probably need to partner, move up from the kitchen garden to partner with farming communities in those areas where we have that kind of linkage, to see what we can do there. There are opportunities. And just, I thank you. Just hold on.
We have a question from Lion Andy Charles.
Yes, but before that,
yes.
Lion Thibault Richards, I think, has put up something which I think we should be aware of, and that is that the website on Lions Club International is replete of information on many of these things. And so we need to know that. We often we don't go there, and we need to go there some more. And perhaps in terms of our multiple district context, we need to also make that very information available. Lion Andy, please.
Thank you, Lion Denise and Lion Jean. It's not really a question, but basically 2 quick points. In Trinidad and Tobago, we do have a very strong push from the authorities to create avenues for farmers to become involved in the food production activities that are taking place. And so, for example, I know of several individuals personally who would go to the Agricultural Development Bank, the ADB. Of course, there are certain qualifications that they would have to put forward, but they give you loans, financing, up to about $250,000 to produce crops and other farming materials so that we could increase the ability to provide food in these trying and testing times. Now, but more so, I'm thinking about the district in terms of what the district can do to encourage collaboration between clubs. And I think that what has to happen is that the district has to take probably the forefront activity in terms of creating a project that could have participation from all the clubs, but one that we can also present to a partner, someone who is a corporate partner that has a brand that says it wants to deal with climate change and all the things associated with global warming. And then if we can partner with them, there's a possibility that we can access necessary funding to help the clubs to be engaged and to be involved so that we can be part of the signature projects that could come out of that. It's just a suggestion.
Excellent idea, Lion Andy. Where I think leadership is listening. Let me just read Lion Jones' comment before I just, in a sense, close out this, because I'm conscious that we're running out of time. At the district level, the Lion professionals in my suggested special arm, she had discussed that earlier, because the area is so important, it should not be taken lightly. Let the professionals access the funds and come up with projects that clubs can then be asked to participate in. Representatives from clubs can sit on many of these committees. Many of us don't have a clue where to start to access or approach anything dealing with climate change. And I think what you're saying ties with, intersects with what Lion Andy just said. So I think we heard you. And I think you're indicating where the capacity gaps are, what we can begin to do to harness our collective efforts and to get collaboration. The other thing is about our promotional advocacy campaign to encourage climate change action. And I'm sure you have some ideas about that. Please put them in the chat. But we want to now move with your permission, and thank you for your participation. You know, we want to now move to close out this session before they don't ask us to come again to do anything like this. So we're being called to action. Can we move? Must we change? Can we change? And will we change? Those are the key questions. Next slide. Well, 3 things about climate change. It is changing. Our climate has changed. We have higher temperatures, variable rain, more intense storms, rising sea level. Our climate continues to change at rates that are alarming. More intense storms, trying tendencies, etc. But what is important for us is that our climate demands change. We must begin to look at issues of mitigation, adaptation, and education, and we must act now. Next slide. So, what can we do? I would like to very humbly suggest that we need to move out of our comfort zone. We've heard from some of the responses here that this is not a zone that we are always necessarily comfortable, not all of us, but and we have to move into the wider era, the challenging era, the era where the magic, where the change can happen, right? And this can be done. Can we move back? I just want to make the point that this is going to be most effective by collaboration, where we brainstorm, we get the ideas. We've seen that already this afternoon, the power of our minds working together so that we can do what we need to do. So, answer to the question, must we change? Yes, we must. Can we change? Yes, we can. And will we change? Of course, the movement is going to do what we need to do to contribute to climate action. This is a rallying call. Next, on to Lion Peter Gay.
Right. So we have discussed actually a lot of what it is we can do from an agricultural standpoint. Again, Lion Denise spoke about it. Increased production, and yes, we should move from beyond our backyard garden and really work with farmers to increase production so we're not starving. Use more resilient crops. One thing it is that when we have our tree plantings, we're just planting anything or just to fulfill that project. But are we planting smart? Are we planting the trees or the shrubs or just a basic thing in a particular area? So for flood-prone areas, you want to plant trees, anything with large roots that holds that soil. So that way, when you do have heavy rains, you don't have soil erosion, you don't have landslides. Same way, even in areas of flooding again as well, you plant trees and so that will absorb more of that water in the area. We spoke about rainwater harvesting and even using compost. Reduce deforestation, again, that has to do with planting, and it is what you plant, not just planting willy-nilly either. Improving our manure management. This now ties in with our greenhouse gases because a lot of the methane comes from poor manure management, as well as we spoke about, working with our local environmental agencies.
And what can we do as Lions for Community? And here you will see that a lot of what we're focusing on here really a nexus between doing things in energy, conservation, promoting, changing the way we operate in terms of how we walk, the use of, equipments that are energy efficient, that nexus between energy, conserving water, and to some extent touching a little bit on solid waste in terms of what it can do. And of course, our voices as an organization with advocacy. So working in energy-related areas, working in water-related areas, etc. the things that we can do. And this list is not exhaustive. Lion and the Child says that we're behind the 8th ball. I've lost the message. Okay. All right, it was a direct message. Okay, I'm so sorry, Lion and pardon me. So the things that we can do and the things that we must do. Next slide. So thank you for listening. Where there is a need, there is a lion. We started out by saying that this presentation was personal. We congratulated the organizers, the environment, and me. It's calling all of us. Individually first, collectively, and in partnership to make a difference. This is an issue of our generation. And we must, as Lions and Leos, make a contribution to make a difference. Thank you so very much. I suspect that we're out of time. Lion Peter Gay, any words from you? Do you have a charge for agriculture?
Plant more. Learn.
Okay.
No, I'm serious. With agriculture, one thing so our generation and the generation before mine knows where your food comes from. I speak to a lot of youngsters nowadays that don't know anything about agriculture and they think all their food comes from the supermarket. Please educate all, plant something today, and please try to help us change climate change. Damn it.
Yes. And great. So we said questions. I know Lion Chris Emmanuel had his hand up earlier. Chris, was your question answered? Lion Chris, seems so. So thank you very, very much. Thanks to the organizers for inviting us to do so. It was a privilege. And thank you so much for your participation this afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Sorry, go ahead, John.
No, I was going to thank them and turn it back over to you, Lion Eldridge. So
okay, thank you.
Ahead.
Thank you so very much, Lion John. Let me personally express my gratitude to our two presenters, Lion Dr. Denise and Lion Dr. Peter Gay, for what I consider a very insightful, interesting, and thought-provoking presentation or presentations this afternoon. Of course, when the subject matter was conceived, we didn't think that it had to be about other people, it had to be about us. And if every one of us play our role effectively, we can at some point reach the desired effect. Let us be an example to the world. We need all hands on deck, says the presenters. The presenter says we have a moral and historical responsibility to ensure that we do what is positive to safeguard our climate, to safeguard our own life and our livelihoods. And we must do these things collectively. There is collective responsibility as individuals on the face of this earth. But of course, we as small island states, Guyana, Suriname, but we as small island states, we are impacted quite heavily by climate change and the vulnerabilities that confront us will, of course, reach the crisis that will, of course, get us to be disappearing from the face of this earth. And that is the last thing we want as responsible citizens of our respective community. They spoke highly with respect to the question of the deadly heat that is being experienced throughout the world. The fires, the uncontrollable fires, the flooding, and particularly those of us who live in flood-prone areas, we need to do what is necessary so we can protect our lands and our homes, our houses and our families. We are beginning to get problems with water shortages in our respective communities. What have we done to the forest? The whole question of, not Denise Forest I'm talking about. We're talking about forest deforestation. The whole question of us participating in chopping trees and for agriculture in some cases. We chop the banana, the whole mountainside in St. Lucia to plant bananas. And what do we get? Erosion out of this. And so we need to be careful. We need to make sure that we don't become a starving community, a starving people. And so we need to do what is necessary because climate change does have a very serious domino effect on all things that surround us. Everything that we live for, climate change has an impact on. And so we will see our economics being, the economies of our countries being impacted. We will see our forests being destroyed. We will see land use being transformed from forests to agriculture to housing. And of course, all of these are impactful. And so there is need for us to expand as Lions our areas of engagement in this sphere of climate change and of course, adaptation, the whole question of adaptation to what is going on around us. There are things we can do which will impact favorably on our participation in ensuring that we do not lose all what we have. And of course, partnership, getting informed, being educated. And I must say that today, our appetites were wet, seriously wet, if not a flood. I don't know where the water came from, but there was a lot for us to chew on today. And I say for those of us who are listening here, that we need to seriously consider, and particularly the leadership of our multiple district, let us not do a year-by-year issue with respect to climate change. We change our heads and chairpersons of the environmental committees every year. And then everybody who comes in wants to try something new. The time has come for us to have a holistic approach to the environment and particularly climate change, that whoever we put in the position, we must now design a 5-year plan and allow this committee to go out there, find the resources to do things for us as Lions throughout the multiple district. And that is going to be the biggest call for action that I would want to propose here and now, that we consider putting in place a structured and devoted body that will have a mandate, not for 1 year, but for 3 to 5 years to work on this, of course, co-opting the expertise we have among us as Lions throughout the multiple district. We are burying too much. We are letting too many of the experts we have in our movement die in terms of underutilization. We need to bring them out to do bigger and greater things for the multiple districts. We cannot continue to be selfish as clubs. We cannot continue to be selfish as governors. We cannot continue to be selfish as coordinators, whatever we are, or chairpersons of committees. We need to begin to spread a little more the knowledge, the competencies that are available to us, that we may do better. So the call is out for us to take some action, because the power that we harness among us, the collective power we have among us is greater than we can really believe it is. Let us go out there, plan smart, plan, P-L-A-N, plan smart, plant smart, particularly in relation to rainwater harvesting, the awareness and knowledge expansion to our people, and above all, let us go and begin to do a great difference in the agriculture of our respective communities and do that under one big umbrella, the Lions Multiple District Climate Change Adaptation Program, whatever you want to call it. Let us get that plan going. I thank you so much again for your contribution to this afternoon. And of course, I hope it will not be in vain. God bless you.